This is a video that was specifically requested by somebody in my comments who approached me rather respectfully. They elaborated that they don't agree with me putting at the end of the videos, or the statement that is, God isn't real, because I put that on the end of a couple videos. There's a reason why, and I did explain that. Most everything that I do when it's pre-recorded content and it's not off the cuff is very purposeful. It's very well thought out for the most part. You know, I'm not a fucking expert, but I do try my best. That being said, they did ask me to explain why I don't believe in the God entity. Now, I'm going to try and keep this as short a video as possible. Attention spans are short. I'm long-winded. I'm very well aware of that. I'm going to try and summarize the best I can, because you were curious and it is a great topic to speak upon. So I will do my best. I think at its simplest core, the idea that there is a deity that controls our lives. A lot of people will debate with me on that and say, well, he doesn't control, it's free will. That's a whole nother fucking conversation for another day. We're not going to get into the aspects of free will versus control or anything of that nature. At its core, and here's where a lot of people run into issues when we discuss stuff like this, is they can't address simple, rudimentary aspects of their beliefs, their foundation. Once you start to do that, they start to get angry, irate, because you're questioning who they are. They identify so deeply with this story that as soon as you bring it into question, and I'm not referring to you only, that's what I'm, your name is I only liked IMES, IMS, I guess. I'm just gonna call you Only for short. They really have an issue with that, and I understand. You know, if anybody questioned, like, I don't know, something that I identified with on such a fucking deep level that I would refuse to accept anything else, I can understand why somebody would be mad, but that's kind of the issue, isn't it? So before I continue to go off on a million and one tangents, I'm going to try and stick to the meat of the discussion. Why do I not believe in an entity, like a God entity? I think you are doing yourself as a human being a massive disservice when you attribute your accomplishments or your failures to God. Granted, yes, of course, people are going to be like, well, I don't attribute my failures to God. I attribute it to the devil. There's different sides of the same coin, dude. You can't believe in one without the other. So of course you need to have a good side and a bad side. I just think you know, it might not be the best example, but you know, when people make these great accomplishments, you know, whether it be like award ceremonies or whatever, sports figures, you know, it's like, oh, thank God for letting me. I think you are doing yourself a disservice because you're not acknowledging the fact that you did that. You did that. And yes, of course, people will go further and be like, yeah, but without God's gift, I wouldn't have been. You don't, not you, but in general, I find it laughable that people aren't able to identify how, psychologically speaking, and again, like trying to bring it down to like a very base point of understanding. I'll just give you an example. If a child, let's say, as they're growing up, every time they accomplish something, they attribute it to their parent. Psychologically speaking, for a human being, that would be detrimental. Plain and simple. I don't need a study to prove that. I think that that's common sense. So when you apply that in the same regard, it just doesn't do you any favors, I don't think. So that's one. Another being the God that is described in most Abrahamic texts, or most holy books that people, you know, in mass worship, is not a God worthy of worship or, you know, time devoted to. I obviously devote this time to it in making videos and whatever, and people could critique that all day, I'm sure. But it's not, because the God described is a petulant child. So just one that is full of contradictions, full of encouraging and forcing people to hurt one another, elitism, just so many aspects of the worst factors or the worst parts of human beings that are highlighted and compounded as a result of these books and that God contained therein, it's not something that I want to have anything to do with, if it does in fact exist. I think an important thing to touch on as well is a lot of people that I've discussed and debated, argued with, whatever, that are diehard Christians, Muslims, what have you. There's always invariably a part in the conversation where they give me this hypothetical. What if God came and proved to you that he existed? I would still not worship him, because when you look at all the examples, the goal of God, let's just look at the Bible as by itself. The goal of that God is to save everyone, right? So they can have everlasting happiness in heaven. That God knows, is an omniscient being, all-knowing, all-powerful, knows past, present, and future, because time doesn't exist to God. So God knows every choice every human will ever make. So when you boil it down to these simple aspects, then what is the point? It's a test? Well, it's a test he already knows the answer to. So it's just, when you look at it that way, it becomes very clear that the God that is described in the Bible is just playing. Again, that's why I reference a petulant child, because it's a child that would do stuff like this and then get mad when it doesn't get its way. More importantly, that God also would know that there would be so many people, myself included, that look at these things with critical thinking. This book that is so filled with contradictions and question. So God could easily do away with all these questions instantaneously, but chooses not to. And knows that as a result of its own choice, people are going to, by proxy, either suffer for eternity, and then it always comes back down to, oh, well, you have to have faith. So I guess that's another reason, is just because all these people that I've encountered that claim to have deep knowledge, the arguments that always come back, that these people that claim to be far more educated than myself, maybe they are, maybe they're biblical scholars or whatever, like that's a fucking job. But it's always this circular answer, or my favorite is when there's these long-winded, like a fucking college level dissertation needed for them to explain why it is the way it is. There's never a simple reason. And if they do offer up a simple reason, it's one that's not based anywhere in reality. It's usually based off of like their personal experiences, their perceptions of their personal experiences. Because that's always what it is. It's always, well, I felt this, I've seen this, I've experienced this, so that's what it is. No, dude, because it's not a universal experience. Every experience is individual to that person. So you can't expect somebody to just take you at your word. You can't provide proof. Simply put, you can't. And they always like to argue that there's numerous aspects of proof. Bible correlates to historical facts that, we can prove. Yeah, but the biggest questions that exist in the Bible, you can't. Noah's Ark, fucking the miracles Jesus performed. Pretty much every account in the Bible that relates to Jesus is not a first-hand account. It goes on and on and on. And then it just becomes circular. I know I'm kind of getting off on a tangent, but I think that's related to a point, because the people that claim to be champions of this religion and claim to know so much and are far more educated than myself and are students of this, their answers are horrible. So by proxy, again, this deity, this entity, knows that these people are going to be its loudest advocates, and they're so poorly equipped every fucking time. No matter if they've studied the Bible far more than myself and can quote scripture at me all day, they don't have actual answers. They don't. And usually the answer I get in response is, well, you just haven't met the right Christian. Isn't that kind of fucking ironic that it always happens to be I just haven't met the right one? How many do I have to meet? Dude, I'm fucking 33. I have traveled up and down the East Coast, West Coast, a little bit of the Midwest. I haven't traveled over the world just yet, but I think America's a pretty good sampling of these Christian champions. And yet, time and time again, they fail. And all they end up doing is cementing, for me, that what I believe and or what I don't believe rather is correct. Because I'm like, you don't, not to say I have all the answers, but you seem far less equipped than myself. So you're still trying to figure it out. I don't think I haven't figured out, but I'm at peace with what I got. Anyway, I think I covered like a couple. Again, this video could be like a fucking hours and hours and hours where I could try to discuss and encompass all the reasons I don't. But again, yeah, I think it does you a disservice. The Bible described, or not the Bible, the God described in the Bible is just not somebody worth worship. And then the contradictions of being all knowing, all powerful. That one's always a big one, because you can't have both. When it's described in the Bible and then you start comparing these things. And I, with the reel that short, I'm sorry, that I uploaded the other day, it was astounding the amount of people that were coming in there. I shouldn't be astounded. But it's always interesting watching people do these mental gymnastics, trying to explain to me, how I'm wrong and they're right. I do want to add a little annotation, not really for you only, but for everybody else, because I know I already kind of said this in my comment, to you. Anybody who watches any of these religious videos that I've been doing, they're fun to do for me because I get to discuss with people, and it's great content, I think. My goal, if anybody's questioning this, is not to convert you. If you're a believer, I can't do that for you. And I've mentioned this in another video. I can't deconstruct for you. Only you can do that. That's not my goal at all. It's simply to ask you to question. That's it, because that's healthy. And if you refuse to do so, sorry about your luck, man. Because I can't force you to do that either. I just hope you do. Because the people that I've met that are diehard Christians that actually do question their faith are the nicest, down-to-earth people that I've ever met. And we disagree on who and if there is a creator. We disagree on where we go when we die. But I will fucking go to bat for those people every fucking time, even though we don't agree. Because they have critical fucking thinking. It's not this blind allegiance to something that just because their parents were raised that way, or somebody that was instrumental in their life led them to believe this at a young age and indoctrinated them. They, in their heart of hearts, believe this, but they're like, you know what? You're right. There are inconsistencies. There are contradictions. Even so, I still believe. That's honorable. I can commend that. But rather, all the people that have been in here usually are, it's well, you're right, but. So it's just, that's not my goal. My goal is not to convert you. The antithesis of that statement, though, is that when you come in to my comments, you're always trying to get me to convert. And I hate to break it to any of you that have come in here. Every single one of you, every argument that you have put forth, every statement has just, again, cemented me further, deeper in my beliefs. You have not in any way brought up something that's made me be like, you know what? Maybe there is a God. Never once with any of these conversations. And it's not because I'm unwilling. I feel I'm very open-minded. I mean, fucking look at me. Goddamn. But it's not once. Not once. So if anything, you're failing your mission to proselytize, to preach. So, I mean, you can keep going. Like I said, good content. I like the conversations. A lot of these people think we're also arguing. I'd like to think we're having a debate. But if it bothers you that much, then if you want to think we're arguing, that's fine too. But yeah, in short, I'm not trying to convert you. You're trying to convert me. You're failing miserably. But keep on keeping on, I guess. And with that, God isn't real.